what a great celebration of animation, Animation Outlaws is. And now that it's going to be released on video on demand platforms and DVD and Blu-ray, everyone will get a chance to see it and hopefully learn from it. So I'm going to go to you, Kat, first. Is what are people going to learn from Animation Outlaws?
Well, you can't help but just enjoy all the animation clips. I've got 65 pieces of animation in there, and they may only be on for a few seconds, but there's a lot of nostalgia, and it brings up a lot of memories for people having gone to these amazing events, these shows where, sold out houses, hundreds and hundreds of people enjoying that film with you, shouting out things like "No Neck Joe," and I think they're just going to walk away with that feeling of like either they had gone to that event and were kind of reliving it when you watch my documentary, or the younger kids will be inspired to see the shorts and say, hey, I can create shorts too. So that's what I hope.
Well, with us is Spike, the man, and when you created the film fest, the animation film fest, the Twisted Animation Film Festival,
yeah.
did you know you were signaling in a new era of animation with all those underground great animators?
No, wow, no, not at that time. We had a few pieces that we couldn't program. We started doing the original show, which was a classic show, which is all ages, which is followed the Academy Awards and, just state-of-the-art animation throughout the world. And we had a few films we couldn't program into that all ages show and the highbrow show, if you will. And, there was a core of animators out of Vancouver, Canada, like Danny Antonucci, Lupo the Butcher, Marv Newland, Bambi Meets Godzilla, Mike Grimshaw, a few others, and then some films we started making out of Cal Arts. So we started getting the core of enough films to put on with the show. And we started out at midnight calling extra sick and twisted extra films. And since it was at midnight, and it was an older crowd, we'd say, do you want to see something we don't normally show? And we did that at Wheeler Auditorium, UC Berkeley, because it was a college crowd and everybody was partying, and we showed them these films. And so it had kind of evolved from that. And then we had to come up with the brand and the concept. And so it kind of evolved from those few shorts as the core of it.
Kat, did you have a love of animation before you did this film?
Absolutely, yeah. And I was fortunate, I think, to work with Spike and Mike back in the late 80s. I was one of those flyer gals, and then I worked the box office, super hard for them. But my favorite thing was to walk into that theater, sold out, packed crowd, everyone's cheering and making a lot of noise and watching that animation. But I did study some animation, how to do it. I didn't actually keep going with the physical part of it, but actually creating it. But I produce animation now, so I'm still in it and working on lots of some of the films you might have seen, like Nightmare Before Christmas and James and Giant Peach. If it has stop motion in it, I like to work in it. So, but yeah, back in college days is when I definitely was exposed to it through Spike and Mike.
I come from that other end of animation. I think we talked about this. My aunt is June Foray, or was June Foray. And so I used to do a lot of voices, and she brought me into the studios with, Chuck Jones and Mel Blanc and those people. When I was a kid, Jay Ward hired me for a couple of voice work jobs back in the day. But I have a love for animation and always have. And so hanging around people like Ward Kimball and, those guys. But then this new group, and we're talking about this new group like 40 years ago, the underground movement hit, and I fell in love with those guys. They are just so raw and so funny.
Yeah,
animation doesn't have to be nice,
right? Things like Happy Tree Friends and things like that. Yeah, definitely.
Spike, where do you think it's all going?
That's to your point, not being nice, the Robin Williams quote. Funny story, I won't get into it, how I got the quote from him at Sundance, but he's like, he used to go to our shows in the Bay Area. He's like, Spike and Mike are like Disney with tits. brilliant.
It's true. It really is true.
Brilliant.
Is there a future for this? I mean, you kind of, in a way, gave birth to Adult Swim and those animators.
Very true. I don't. Oh boy, the future. I'm not sure about. It's just funny. I look back in time and I look at all these things and like South Park and Family Guy and all this stuff, and I see things that we saw in irreverent animation and programming, and then coming up with the idea, the brand of Sick and Twisted, and then programming and actually having to make films at that time. We produced a lot of the shorts ourselves because there flat out wasn't enough content to put together a 90-minute theatrical show.
Wow.
So that's why we produced the first two Beavis and Buttheads and all that sort of thing. So all this stuff has come out of that. I know what I'd like to see happen with myself and the company, but I don't know as far as the animation industry. I don't know what's next there. I just know what I'd like to see with me and what I have.
Well, what is that? Tell me about that.
What I'd like to see after all this time, and we put together a hell of a library of content that we own, and we have great brands, and we've proven ourselves everywhere. Sold out shows in Annecy in France, in Canada, Toronto, Vancouver, Boston, La Jolla, wherever. And we own the rights to all this content, and we get more content all the time. We have a lot of street credit. So we're talking to some people now, but I'm old school. I come from film, and I guess what I've learned out of all this is knowing what works and finding it and seeing it first beyond anybody in the world. And so I know how to program and entertain people, because I look at it coming from someone that came from not much money or anything. I saw this, we'd do a show, and Mike and I'd do a show, and we'd have thousands of people there, 10,000, 5,000, 18, 15,000 people, and they paid good money. And we owe it to them, to the integrity, to have them leave like they got more than their money's worth, and that we had this opportunity with this creative medium to make some money and to make a living, coming from a spot where we didn't have that opportunity. So what I'd like to see with what we have is and we're talking to someone right now, but I'd like to either in an acquisition, a partner up, or something with somebody that can take the overused phrases, take the ball and run with it, take the torch and run with it, because I'm not in the technical world. It's not the dance that I do, but it's like we have all these great boats that are tied up at the dock ready to sail, but I'm not the guy anymore to sail them in this new waters. And so that's what I'd like to see happen, and that's what the hell I'm looking for.
I would love to see a Twisted Animation Museum somewhere,
Okay.
where people could go in and watch whatever they want to watch, and have that supported by people like Pete Docter, who's a huge fan, and that group, because that wouldn't be hard to put together. It would
Actually,
just be.
I think I don't quote me on this, but I believe that San Diego Comic-Con was talking to Spike about a small wing or a part of their museum in San Diego to do that.
That would be amazing. Kat, when you interview these people, what were your favorite stories that people like Pete Docter had about Spike and Mike?
Well, just the things, not always the above the board approach to how they paid them. Mike Mitchell talks about, he kind of goes through a long list of things, and at the end of it is like, oh, maybe a bag of weed or something like that. But just stories like that, where they definitely weren't the conventional film guys trying to get films. They really sponsored and helped a lot of these guys, and either by finishing painting, the ink and painting, all the work. So love to hear stories like that. Very supportive of their animator directors.
I think that's also goes to what Spike and Mike created and did was let people know that type of anime, there was a need for it. There was a place for it, and you gave them that venue, Spike.
Thank you for recognizing. A lot of people don't recognize that, but Yeah, we did. And that, it's hard to even explain. I don't know if I can, but it's pretty frightening going out, especially we were really young guys and kind of hippie guys, and we'd go out to a new city. We're coming into San Francisco, completely unknown, and we'd go in there and like no money and no sponsors. That's the other thing. Everything we've done has been independent, which I'm personally pretty proud of. It's hard, and it's a hard road to go, but none of the classic government grants, no rich parents, no corporate sponsors, no nothing. So you have to sell out a show at Riverside City College to have the money to do your next show. Or maybe you can do enough now, maybe you can do 2 shows, but you better damn well sell out those 2 shows if you want to do a 3rd or 4th show. And it was like putting it out like that, and just the amount of dedication it took, the 18-hour days and just guerrilla marketing, again, because you don't have the traditional money to buy the TV spots, the full page ads, all this kind of stuff, and pull the levers. So you're out on the street handing out hundreds of thousands of flyers and getting run off some campus where you're flyering and all those sort of things. And then just taking the money we made from one and putting it in to produce the films and believing and finding these talent when they're 19, 20, 21, 22 years old, and believing in them and putting the money into it and go, okay, we're going to take your crude storyboard and we're going to have Bardell's in Vancouver ink and paint it. We're going to have Al Sands 35 millimeter camera shoot. We're going to have Photocam do the 35 negs and release prints. We're going to have somebody else do the sound, and putting the money into that to make the short even happen, and then to take the money to go out and promote it, to get sold out shows so people could see it. And that's, in all honesty, that's what we've done, and we've done it time and time again. And that's why my statement a few minutes ago to the value of the brands and the content. And it's to be perfectly honest, it gets pretty frustrating, because at times I'm like, what else do I have to do to get some respect or somebody to recognize there's a value here?
Well, I think it goes to time. We have a generation or two that, don't know those names that you just mentioned, and I think they have to be re-educated. But I certainly know what you did, and I thank you for it. And Kat was handing out flyers in the 1980s. She was part of your guerrilla marketing team. But that was all seat of your pants stuff. But there was something honest and organic about it then. And it wasn't corporate, and that's what attracted the college students and the young animators.
Yeah, and just making it an event. We had Scotty the Shredding Wonder Dog up on stage, destroying the balloons, and Mike kind of up on the stage as a comedian, like making being a magician and doing jokes and doing impersonations, and he was so funny up on stage. And so when you went to the show, like Spike had said earlier, you definitely got more than your money's worth. It was an event. I mean, even waiting in line, the excitement, the hyperness of people waiting in line because it was such a long line. They made it really fun.
I remember attending one, and if my memory serves, you even had a character named Captain Sticky show up who used to throw peanut butter at people. It was such a great time in life.
There's a lot of dress-up contests. It almost feels like that energy from the early San Diego Comic-Cons, where people would show up in outfits and costumes, and Mike would host wear different ties or ugly tie contests way before other people were doing that. So it was definitely an event.
We did one promotion, I know, in Sacramento at the Crest and the Palace of Fine Arts in San Francisco, where we'd hand out the flyers and people put the flyers on their refrigerator with a magnet or something. And so I said, if you bring the refrigerator with the flyer on it, we'll let you in free. And so I remember the Palace of Fine Arts, it's a huge lobby there. This one guy had the thing on his back. He walked the whole coverage of the thing and set it down there with the thing on it. But it was promotional stuff like that. And also I wanted to say too, your comment about earlier people we brought in involved, like the Beavis and Buttheads and Wallace and Gromit and some of the earlier stuff. We also are getting new content all the time, And there are people that all generations would know now, like we did the first films with Andrew Stanton, i.e.
Oh, sure.
Nemo, Dory, Pete Docter. We produced 3 films with Pete Docter, now the head of Pixar Animation. So, you know, there's a lot of also contemporary folks in there as well, plus getting new content all the time. We just got a film from a company of friends in Colorado called Mighty Fudge Studios.
Wow.
And it's an animation piece. And I've come to know these things in grade, you know, 1s to 10, or if they're landfill. And I still am proud of myself that if somebody said, put together an impeccable 90-minute show for me right now, I can deliver a 90-minute show of entertainment value that's parallel to any damn thing anybody wants to put on the table.
Kat, I'm going to give you the last word about Animation Outlaws, because these guys truly were outlaws. They just flew by the seat of their pants, as I said, but you were one of them.
Well, now you know. My secret's out. No, I was one of them. I was part of the gang. Spike has a habit of giving people nicknames. So I was Irish Torporama. Also, Little Drummer Boy. I'll explain that one some other time.
we'll need another movie for that one.
Yeah. So please come out and see it. You don't have to be a Spike and Mike fan to enjoy this documentary, because I do have so much animation in it. You'll be just kind of, it's coming at you constantly. And then on my website, animationoutlaws.com, I list all the films in order of appearance. So a lot of people come to me and they say, I don't know which that was. That Bill Plimpton? Was that Bruno Bozzetto? I can't remember. And I say, well, just, go to the website, and in order of appearance, you'll see the films. But you get to see a lot. And I wanted to give credit where credit's due. And Spike and Mike really did launch this style of short format festival for animation.
Yeah, it's an incredible film, and Spike. Before, I know you want to jump in, but I have to tell you how much I love you, dude, and a lot of my humor, comes out of animation, and that stuff just, as a college kid, that just set me aside, and I couldn't stop laughing at some of those ridiculous, wonderful underground cartoons.
Again, thank you very much. I just had one, as I didn't mention this earlier, but just my take on Cat. One, it's very cool. I mean, that's the other thing, we kind of showed how cool animation can be. The documentary is very cool. I'll always throw this in. It's like Cat stepped up. She wrote the bills. She did this professionally. Anybody that's seen this documentary, it's professionally done. She got great camera people. She got great research people. It's a damn good documentary. It may be biased because I'm in it all that. Aside from that, I defy anybody to watch it. And she's one of the few people in this world ever in my life that has believed in us on the road going the other way, and stepped up and wrote a check and believed in us. And that's huge. And I have to throw that in.
Right.
Well, you're loved, Kat.
Yeah, well, I wrote that check.
Well,
I did.
And thank you guys so much for this. Animation Outlaws available Blu-ray, DVD on all VOD platforms. Catch it. It's going to be 65 minutes of laughing and just understanding how all this happened, and yet praying that it happens again. I hope it does. I hope we see another Twisted Film Festival very soon.
Great. Well, thank you so much for having us.
I appreciate it a lot. It's a fun to do an interview like yours.
Thank you so much, guys.